Well, good afternoon. Today we have with us Thabatta Mizrahi, who's an educator based in South Florida, USA, who has over 2 decades of experience in neurodiversity, special needs, child advocacy, learning development, and curriculum design. Welcome, Thabatta.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So just a little bit more about an introduction about you. Your studies and experience has also fueled your unwavering pursuit to advocate and educate in the area of special needs. And that's primarily what we're here to talk about today. Thabatta has presented at conferences and led workshops on various topics related to special needs, education, services, and professional development internationally, and is a trusted and recognized by her colleagues and clients for her passion, dedication, and innovative perspective, particularly when it comes to children with special needs and their families. So we're pleased to have with us today Thabatta to learn more about how separated and divorced parents can work together with their children's school and its administrators and teachers to help children thrive in a two-home family. So let's get going. So Thabatta, you've worked in various roles as an educator and as an administrator in school systems. When you know that a child's parents have separated or divorced, how do you see yourself helping or advocating for the children's educational needs?
So I think first and foremost, I see myself in my primary role as an educator in being able to offer information to parents that could be helpful as they embark on this really tough process that is separation or divorce, or even in the rebuilding phase post separation or divorce. Oftentimes in families, there's that one parent that takes on more of the decision making or information gathering in terms of the educational needs. And when separation or divorce happens, either that other parent is taking on more than they've ever taken on before, or is sharing a role that they've never shared before. So I find that starting from the place of offering information is really helpful because it gets the questions going and it gets good discussion going, and ultimately it builds positive communication. Secondly, I think I see myself as an advocate because the educational needs of a child is really one puzzle piece in the larger, the whole child. And if we understand what the child may need in the future, by backwards design, we can kind of figure out what decisions we need to make today and in the years to come. And if we make really goal-oriented decisions, we can together collaboratively build like the scaffolding that's going to be necessary for future decisions to come. So I advocate for the child, but essentially I'm also helping parents, I feel, plan for today and for tomorrow.
Well, and it sounds like the word to collaborate with the family is so important, and really even the fact of you as a teacher, as an administrator, having the knowledge that the family is separating or has separated or is divorced coming into your to your school is so important, and such valuable information, because that's how you can best help. I imagine that there's some families where you may not know what's going on at home, and that really, I would imagine, as an educator, makes you somewhat powerless in even helping.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I try to encourage parents to remember that the school can really be an ally in the process, and to really count on the school to be that ally.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. How do you recommend that parents use the schools and its administrators as allies or as helpful professionals during their separation or divorce?
So I think, first of all, I remind parents that during the separation or divorce, the school and the consistency that the school environment can provide for the child is really crucial for the child. It offers a sense of comfort and a sense of security for a child that's going through a process where there's so many changes happening all at once that it can feel like the earth is crumbling from underneath them. So for 8 hours a day, there's that sense of normalcy, a sense of routine, a sense of calm and predictability, which is a big factor in terms of that sense of security. So I coach parents in three main areas. I tell them to really find a key person in the school, one key person in the school, so it doesn't feel so overwhelming, that feeling of like, what's my kid's schedule? Who do I have to update today? Did I remember to tell this person? What's that phone number? Do I email? Do I call? It just can be very overwhelming. But if you can determine that one key person in the school that you can communicate on a daily basis with and inform about any big changes or major concerns, that person should be somebody that can disseminate that information to others in the school and really get the important information to the staff that would be supporting the child. I think that helps parents go from a place of overwhelm to a place of feeling supported and heard.
And, that consistency, stability, and routine that we know is so important for children's development. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's their job, is to go to school, and that's their 8 hour a day. And that's sort of something that's really easy for parents to remember, that consistency in and of itself is there for them without even trying. I mean, so often parents have to find that way to add consistency and that way to add stability and routine, but that's right there for them, and can really help naturally in their development.
Yeah. And it can seem like one more thing for the parent to do. And oftentimes parents are like, no, I don't need one more thing on my to-do list. But I often say it's one more thing that's going to take away like 30 things from your to-do list if you really allow the school to be your ally. The other two things that I remind them is to allocate time and a method for both giving and receiving that information, because as great as it is for the child to be in the school environment for those 8 hours of security and predictability and all of that, it is 8 hours away from the parent's watchful eye. So it's equally important for the parent to receive information about what that child's day was like, and on a more consistent basis than when things are going as a typical day. So it's important to really speak to the school and that designated person about how that communication is going to happen. Is it going to be through text, through email, voice notes, phone calls, whatever it is, so that it can be consistent and ongoing.
And the old saying of, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so it's like, when you say, instead of me taking my child to swimming lessons, that's twice a week, I'm just going to teach my child how to swim. We're going to go to public swim and I'm going to teach them how to swim. Well, after a week or two, it sort of falls off and other things come onto the plate. Whereas if you have that consistency of, I know that I'm going to take my kid to their swimming lessons that twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5 until 6 p.m., it happens. And so the same thing with the communication is that the more regularized, it sounds like from what you're saying, the more regularized you can make it, the more likely it is to happen and to continue to happen on that sustainable basis where everyone comes to expect or to remember, oh, it's 5 o'clock or it's 4 o'clock. We gotta we gotta exchange that communication, that daily or weekly communication, whatever it looks like.
Absolutely. And then, the parent can use that information to kind of keep supporting the child through this emotional turmoil during this period of time. And then, the final thing I would say is to really allow this team to make suggestions. I think oftentimes during this turmoil, it feels like so much is resting on the parent's shoulders. And like I sometimes I have these meetings with parents where I just say, just take a second and take a deep breath, because the shoulders are up here and it just feels like so much is on their plate. And having a team of people that you trust to give suggestions is really important. So just take that meeting, go to the school, because oftentimes the team can kind of filter out what's not important and really zero in on really important goals, fewer and more targeted, more prioritized goals, so that the developmental milestones can really be protected, and the parents don't feel like, okay, so I don't have to do hours of homework, or that's not what's important right now. What's important is, and list what it is.
And, I imagine it would be really important as well for both parents to be as involved as possible directly with, and we're talking here in the context of education, but even, for dentist appointments or doctor's appointments or counseling appointments or any of these kinds of things where there's other professionals involved, the more that both parents can hear it straight from, well, we'll call it straight from the horse's mouth, the better, because then it's not sort of mom against dad as to, who's got the better information, or who are we going to use, mom's suggestion or dad's suggestion. It's no, we're not going to use either of your suggestions. We're going to take the recommendations of the professionals. And of course, as parents, we put our own mind on it as well, as to what we think is best, but the idea is, especially in a separation or divorce, if we can allow the professionals that are involved in our children's lives really take the reins and it really protects our children from that balancing act of who's right and who's wrong, mom or dad.
Absolutely. The information comes off as a little bit more neutral, and you even have a neutral party kind of guiding those conversations, aligning opinions a little bit, expanding on that knowledge base a little bit more.
Let's turn to a little bit of a different topic with respect to parenting plans and planning for the needs of children as we go forward into separation and divorce. And I know that one of the services that you provide is helping parents to create parenting plans and to consult with respect to parenting plans. And one of the things that you've mentioned to me that's really important to you is to focus really on the children's individualized needs, and not just as opposed to sort of lumping them together as, this is what we're going to do for the children, as opposed to, this is what this child might need and this child might need. I'd like it if you could expand for a few minutes about what that looks like to focus on individualized needs and why that's important for families.
Absolutely. So as a consultant in this process, what I try to do with both parents and professionals is to make sure that they're putting a magnifying glass on the unique needs of each of the children. So as I offer information, but I also ask a lot of questions so that I can kind of decipher what the unique needs are of each child. And these can range from things like unique safety considerations depending on the age, or if there's a diagnosis, or if there's medical concerns, safety considerations that possibly one parent has, it comes very naturally to them, but the other parent has never had to tackle before. So it kind of needs to go into the parenting plan. Or educational needs, therapeutic services, unique future financial considerations that maybe is not typical in a parenting plan, or like I mentioned, medical needs, or even developing parenting or advocacy skills in a parent that hasn't really navigated those waters before. So that's also really important. So by asking questions in these particular areas, I sort of help guide the parents and the professionals in tweaking the parenting plan so that they can properly address each child's particular and unique needs that may exist either today or in planning for the future.
And we know that there's lots of different process options that families have for divorcing. There's, from do-it-yourself options at the kitchen table to mediation, collaborative divorce court. I imagine you sort of practice in all of them. You see families and help families on a consulting level in all these different processes. But I know from knowing you that the collaborative divorce process is something that you really feel strongly about, and you're very involved in the collaborative movement as far as helping families when they're engaged in that process. So I'd be interested to hear your point of view as an educator and a consultant as to why you feel so strongly about how the collaborative divorce can help families when we're considering unique needs or children with special needs, that sort of thing.
So I'm definitely an advocate of collaborative. And I believe that it's because at its core, collaborative really encourages the positive communication, the teamwork, and most of all, the self-determination. So it really puts parents in the driver's seat when it comes to the decision making. And in doing so, it allows the parenting plan to be um, tweaked, and it allows the decision making process to kind of be guided by the families and the child's needs. So it doesn't as opposed to like a very cookie cutter, kind of process, like a plug in the information. And specifically for children with special needs, it's really crucial because a typical fill in the blank, like 50% this or 50% that, and this is how it's gonna happen. You need more flexibility. You need to kind of say, okay, maybe that's the goal that we want to get to, but we're not going to be able to make such a drastic change right from the onset. So that may be a goal that we achieve, but we have to give it time to be able to get there so that we can introduce change little by little in a more gradual way, just as an example.
And it sounds like, even going back to the last thing we were talking about, is talking about the children's individualized needs, and where you can really get into those details that maybe the lawyers or the other professionals involved, or even the parents, haven't even thought of these questions. I mean, you've probably got 200 questions you could think of off the top of your head that you would ask, that other people haven't, the separating spouses haven't even considered yet. And so that is what I would imagine and understand to be the beauty of the collaborative divorce process, because it allows for the time and the space to ask all of those questions that otherwise would be not necessarily possible if it were in other processes.
Absolutely. And I think that you really hit it on the head when you said that it gives that space for that discussion to occur, to ask those questions and to really dig deep into it. Because even the best parent advocate is still living in the now. They haven't experienced with their child what is going to happen in the future, right? Maybe they've experienced it with a different child, but the unique needs of this particular child haven't happened yet. And especially for children with certain special needs, there's really things that we can, by backwards design, plan really well for. But if they're not planned well for, you're kind of setting the child up for a lack of success.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I often say that the more that we can plan ahead of time by asking these questions that the parents haven't thought of, or haven't come to conclusion on, the better that we're setting this family up for success as they go forward in their co-parenting. A lot of times when I work with families, they don't want me to ask them the 25,000 questions of, we haven't thought of that yet. Our child's only 2 or 3 years old, or very young, and we don't need to think about that right now. And certainly there are some things that, we can leave to some later years, but the more that we can ask these kind of questions that maybe haven't been considered, whether you're separated or still living under one home, they haven't been considered yet, we can really help to help with the family to be more effective as they're going forward, co-parenting from 2 homes.
100%.
Yeah. So I'm going to get to my favorite part of every interview, which is my top 3 tips. And I did give you a heads up as to this, so that you could think about it ahead of time. I'd like your top 3 tips on how separated and divorced parents can best support their children in the education system.
I love this question, by the way. So I would say number 1 would be become used to becoming informed. I see parenting as a skill that we are constantly and consistently developing, and we're going to have to continue to need to develop every step of the child's way. So whether it's through books or websites, support groups, or an individual you turn to for that information, continue to become informed every step of the way, because I think one of the key roles that we play as parents is liaison between home and school. And if we want to set our children up for success in navigating the educational world, we have to not only become informed and understand the whys behind why our children are going through things, what's awry, what's not, but also in how to communicate that to the school, right? Like, what are the school's goals? What are the home goals? And how do we make the two kind of jive together?
Mm-hmm. So before you go on to number 2, I'm just going to make a comment to that. In our portal where this interview will be, we also have a library of various resources for families that focus on that extra information. Some people like to take in information by video, by blogs, by articles, by books. Everyone sort of has a different way, and so we've created this library of it's my personal library, and it's just these amazing resources that have really helped families over the years that I've been working with families. And so I'm going to talk to you after the interview, and I'm going to get you to even make your suggestions, and we'll add some of the books that you would recommend for families, and we'll add those to our library.
Sure. That would be great. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, tip number 2.
So tip number 2, I would say, is be generous and compassionate. And what I mean by that is that whether you've been the involved parent in the role of educational support or not, you're going to either have to become more involved or have to begin to share that role with the other parent. So it either one takes a lot of adjusting. And I would say be generous with the information you give each other and be compassionate in the communicating method, because ultimately the number one person who benefits from this is the child or the children. And when navigating this becomes really difficult, my recommendation would be place the child front and center again, prioritize their needs, because I think that when parents remind each other that it's about the children, it kind of gives that neutral tone. It brings them back to a neutral space.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to actually expand and extend your, you said compassion and kindness, right? Generosity, yes. Well, kindness too. But let's expand that to the entire divorce process, not just about the educational needs. But that is a great tip. And sort of the idea that the more flexible and generous you are with each other, as you said, the person or people that it really benefits the most is the kids. So
I agree.
Perfect. Tip number 3.
And number 3, I would say, and I think this is really near and dear to my heart, and I would say it's one of the most important ones, is that we have to remember that all of the different areas of the development are really interconnected. And we have to really always consider the whole child, because as I mentioned before, the educational needs of a child is just one tiny puzzle piece. And sometimes we have like tunnel vision about what grades they're getting, or, how well they did on the tests, or what the percentile score is, or whatever, but it's a tiny piece of the puzzle that is the whole child. And I would say, just remember there's the emotional, the social, the intellectual, the physical, even the spiritual. And where one area is suffering, all the other areas are being impacted. And divorce is a tremendous disruptor in a child's life. And the child is going to need time to heal, and we have to give it time, and we have to give it support. And the more support we give to that healing process, both for the parents and for the children, we're helping all the other areas of development. And as a consequence, it has a positive impact on the educational piece as well.
Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to thank you for those tips. Those are amazing. I'm going to throw something at you that I didn't necessarily plan, but or I didn't give you a heads up on. But I know that you're located in Florida, in the U.S., and our audience is international. So if we'll be providing a link to you and how to get a hold of you in our portal. But if families appreciated what you've said and really want to reach out to you, the nice thing, about the technology these days is that you can come in by Zoom to anyone, anywhere. So are there geographic boundaries around who you can help and the families that you're able to serve, or are you sort of worldwide? If someone wanted to bring you in Australia, Canada, Europe, anywhere they could?
So the beauty of the consulting is that I am there are no boundaries. I've done consulting in the past in Brazil and in Israel. I speak 4 languages, so that also, not a barrier.
Okay, which 4 languages? Let's list them in case people need that.
So Hebrew, Portuguese, Spanish, and of course, English.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And, that's one of the difficulties with the legal practice or some other professions where we do have sort of those geographic barriers that we can't help people all over the world. And so that's wonderful. You are such a wealth of information, and the families that are listening to this interview are going to be benefited so much by all of your knowledge and the obvious care that you have for all the families that you help, and the wealth of experience that you come to the table with is just invaluable for families. So I'm hoping that people are able to reach out to you. And like I said, we'll leave a link in the bottom. So thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you. What you're doing and all these resources, they're just so valuable. So it's an honor to have been asked to be part of this.
Yeah, and you're a wonderful part of this, and are at Up a Notch Learning. What we're really trying to do is to create an e-learning community hub, so that it's all the positive information, all the information that can benefit families as they transition into two homes. And there's so much information out there, the Dr. Google situation out there on the internet. And so we're trying to create a membership portal we have free and paid resources on here, but what we really want to do is to create something so that families can have a hub to go to as they go through their separation. So thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you.
Okay, bye.